I found it easier to come out gay in rural Alberta than I did Indigenous looking the way I do.
You're listening to the QT podcast, where we explore how queer professionals and entrepreneurs are building a brighter future for queer communities and the tech industry at large. I'm Margi Marchetti. My pronouns are they, them, and welcome to the QT podcast.
So, awohkotsinaa Gregory John. Hi, my name is Gregory John. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the lead executive at Unimaize Technologies.
As a sort of like first question, what is your origin story? What is your education and how did you get from there into tech?
When I have this question, it's really interesting because there's often times that we gravitate towards like the Steve Jobs story of like, oh, I went to Harvard and dropped out. Well, you know what? For a lot of us, it's the exact opposite of that. You know, finding ways through difficult circumstances that take incremental steps towards whatever this final goal is. I have a Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Calgary in finance. And even that was its own interesting story. I got accepted to the university in biological sciences. I was very strong in science in high school, but then I realized science in university is nothing like science in high school. So I did this mid-year switch and started taking a bunch of classes because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And really found this attraction to the business world through actually a summer placement at an energy company here in Calgary. And it was that kind of moment when I was like, you know what? Business is all about relationships and navigating often complex relationships where, it's all about good communication and being able to translate technical information and in my world, financial information into something that's relatable and tangible for people that might not have that same kind of educational experience. After that summer placement, I started going the pre-commerce route, and it didn't turn out too well because I was still in the mindset of high school where I didn't have to study and things would just kind of come easy and when you're doing statistics and calculus, you kind of have to study. So I actually got asked to leave for academic reasons because I think I just failed out the semester. So it was this work back process where I had to go through open studies and then go into the Faculty of Arts before I transferred back into the commerce program that made me realize that this incremental progress towards this final goal was so important. And so fast forward, starting my career, in energy, it was kind of what Calgary is typically known for. And I found that a dilemma between being gay, Indigenous in this very conservative economic place where it didn't sit well with me and I wasn't coping very well with, what I thought I needed to be in this space. But then who I really was as a gay Indigenous man working in a place that still wasn't very, accommodating or welcoming to people like me. So I ended up getting fired. So I again, it was that kind of like, okay, well, now what? And, I had the opportunity to go work in the United States for a few years after that. And not that was the comfortable decision, but in 2015, when that happened, the economy was really bad in energy and oil had fallen quite a bit and nobody was hiring. And so, I started characterizing this as my yes phase, where I just started saying yes to everything, either to gain experience or just make that paycheck. And I think that was really kind of the opening into tech, because when I was working in California, I had to kind of know how to do everything, a consulting client wanted me to do. So did I necessarily have a background in it? No, but, I could figure it out. And so that led me into, working in the music industry, working in industrial manufacturing, working in, answering your question, this is how I kind of got into the tech startup world, was working on 4 startups in Silicon Valley, by just kind of saying yes to things. And what I realized is that finance background really provided that knowledge of, yes, I can actually do this. It's just learning how to talk about it. or learning, the jargon or the language behind tech that brought me here. So long story long, that's how I got here.
Wow. And how did the process go from working from for other startups to funding your own?
None of these startups that I was able to work on in California exist today. And I'm not going to say it was my fault. I was responsible for building a lot of the financial statements and the pro formas and look forward projections for these companies that made me understand each revenue component, expense component in a way that strategically put together what a company should look like, or even the options behind what is the revenue structure? What are the options? How can we look at sustaining revenue? And how do we look at creating this narrative around your own idea and innovation? That was 2015, 16, and just the start of 2017. And then I came back to Calgary. And when I was looking at what was next, I was kind of over those, job postings that said, this is your role, these are your responsibilities, no more, no less, and what you're going to be measured on. After I had such a rich experience kind of learning how to build something from scratch. So that was kind of the birth of Unimaize Technologies. And funny enough, it was at the Pride Fest in 2017 in Calgary, which is over the September long Labor Day weekend, that I came up with the idea. And I was tired of standing in lines for alcohol and looking at the disarray of labor and how it's organized in a way that we could digitize a lot of those transactions to make the environment way more efficient. So while I was standing in line for a beer where I needed to bring cash, buy a paper ticket, and then walk it like 3 feet to get a beer, I was like, there has to be a better way. And really that was kind of the start of Unimaize Technologies, was waiting in line being like, I really want a beer right now.
Wow, that is your Steve Jobs moment, right? There are people who drop from college and people who just like stand in line and have incredible ideas.
Well, and I was thirsty. It was really hot out. So when I hear all of these, like, I was climbing up Mount Everest and blah, 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 I came up with this brilliant idea. And I'm like, I was just thirsty and hot and wanted my beer right now. Sometimes innovation comes in the most simplistic ways that address these kind of primal needs. And then I looked at the efficiency model and I realized that we could really enhance it through digitization and automation, which satisfies clients, the regulators, and the liquor control aspects, but then also, the capacity and liquor management. And that's where this tech environment started, was over something very simple.
This podcast is powered by the Canada Media Fund. As the country's largest funder of screen content, we are proud to support 2S LGBTQ+ creators. Learn more at cmf-fmc.ca.
At RBC, diversity and inclusion is more than a value. It's a strength, an engine for innovation and economic prosperity. As proud sponsors of QueerTech, RBC puts D&I into action every day by developing strong talent and creating an inclusive workplace that brings their purpose of helping their clients thrive and communities prosper to life. Find out more about tech at RBC and their latest roles on their jobs page.
I want to take a step back. You mentioned your frustration at the beginning of your professional journey as a queer Indigenous person, working for more traditional corporate companies. Can you share with us your journey as a queer person? So your story of coming out personally, professionally, with those around you, and how that intersected with your professional journey as well.
Absolutely. And I have to say my personal coming out story is pretty unremarkable, but I think one thing to be said there is really my family has just been that rock where they knew from early on. I have a twin brother, and being able to put us on we're very different in many ways, and I remember my mom telling this. My grandma said, Greg's going to have a harder life as he grows up, and and just make sure you take care of him. And that's something my grandma told my mom, knowing that there was probably a little gay in me somewhere. So she had that understanding and was really able to, it's not like it was a hard thing for my parents, but certainly something that, in rural Alberta, in any kind of rural setting, it was certainly tough. And I found it easier, however, to come out gay in rural Alberta than I did Indigenous, looking the way I do. And there were so many times where people would say, oh, you don't look Indigenous, or I don't have that stereotypical, I don't know, feather, whatever it might be about what an Indigenous person is. So because I'm lighter skinned, that there was this weird place in the middle, and being a Métis person, which is that combination of Indigenous and European settler lineage and heritage, there was pressure from both sides being like, well, you're not white enough to be white, but you're not brown enough to be Indigenous as well. So that was actually the harder coming out story for me, because I was getting it from both sides of not being accepted as Indigenous. And so funny enough, in my career, it was easier for me to be accepted as Indigenous because we have this legal standard called the duty to consult in Canada, where anything that potentially could affect Indigenous rights, there has to be this in-depth consultation process that companies need to take seriously and hear the concerns of Indigenous people and find ways when working with Indigenous communities to find solutions to these concerns. So me stepping into that role was a lot easier in energy because there was this legal need. But on the backside, being gay and Indigenous was that challenging part, working in, like I said, a sector that's been traditionally very conservative. Just recently has there been this really important discussion around intersectionality and how can I bring my entire self to work where it's not based in tokenism, where, it's okay for me to be this one day. Oh, but now we need you to be gay, Greg, or Indigenous, Greg. A lot of companies still have challenges understanding what that means and how they can foster an environment where I can step into this space and just go to work. As simple as it sounds sometimes, that's all I want to do some days. I don't want to be this Greg or that Greg. I just want to go to work and do work. As this tech industry has grown in Alberta and in particular Calgary, I've made this really, really important discussion around, let's not make this tech industry what we hated about the energy industry. This conservative old boys club where if you have money, you have privilege and you have a right to go pitch your idea to the best of the best. And you know what? It's happening. And it's very frustrating where it's like, all of these people that are being championed as these great tech innovators come from a place of privilege. Well, somebody like me is viewed as a novelty to have a part of the discussion, not leading those discussions, despite the fact, I have, that international experience from the heart of Silicon Valley. And I'm almost done my executive MBA, and I'm highly educated, I'm highly experienced, but I am tired of kind of being this novelty that deserves way more attention than, some, tech bros, and I don't want to come across as like insincere, but it's really frustrating to see everything we hated about energy become kind of central to the tech conversation. And so, that's really kind of the purpose also of Unimaize, is to claim this space. We're here for a reason, and we're not just a novelty, but we happen to be Indigenous and LGBTQ2+ owned, which is often a competitive advantage if people would listen to the benefits that come with those added perspectives in a kind of a burgeoning new tech industry.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You mentioned so many interesting points. When there are like new emerging industries that we want to make better, but then money comes in it, right? And privilege. And then things are like easily just change and we forget kind of where we come from. I would imagine, as you mentioned, you face some barriers entering different industries, and I would say from the beginning of your career to like mid your career and then becoming an entrepreneur. How did these different obstacles evolved through the career? What did you face at the beginning, and then how did that change, and what are you facing now?
I was speaking at a conference a few weeks ago around this topic, around how this has evolved for me. And, I get tired of this, you're so resilient. I'm tired of being resilient. But what I've learned is to expect the worst, unfortunately, and prepare myself for it. And isn't that a bad way to look at things? But because of, the factor that you just kind of spoke of is, we go back to these things that we're comfortable with, but oppression and marginalization have not changed. The tactics behind which have not changed. So I think I've just become better prepared to expect those things to happen and be a few steps ahead of them in a way that protects me first and protects people like me and around me that might not have that same kind of resilience, that I don't wave as like this source of pride, because this resilience is built out of challenges that a lot of people don't know how to cope with. And because of my friends and my family and that support, that's the reason I'm here. It's not because I'm resilient. It's because I have connections and that support system to carry me through those certain things, which I owe 100% to. So again, it's not me being like, oh, I made it through. No, it's that thank God I had the people around me to support me. And at the start of my career, I didn't have the language or overt ability to say when things are wrong as they're happening. I knew and I felt it when it was happening and responded the way, I think I was expected to in my mind, so that I could set myself up for that promotion or, be the good corporate employee that's just a yes person. That was toxic to my being and my ability to contribute. And so, I really believe that's the reason I got let go so early on, is because of my inability to communicate and navigate those really toxic environments. But because when we sense it the second time, we're like, we've felt this before. We've been here before. And what have we learned from the last time that makes us better prepared for this time? And I really think that that's been a part of my innovation journey, is being able to learn almost on the fly where, hey, I know this, I can feel it. And it's my empathy to my environment that's allowed me to still be here, still pushing forward for things that, I know that are right. And I'm not looking for others to pat me on the back and say these are right, because I feel it. And I'm listening to people along the journey that also help me guide that knowing of correctness and knowing of being authentic and doing the right thing instead of sending those trial balloons I think many people are accustomed to of, hey, is this right? Is this right? Well, no, after all of this time, I've seen what was wrong, and I'm not ever going to recreate that in a way that perpetrates that environment on someone else. So I think that that's really been a part of my growth experience and learning to, navigate this space because it's very difficult. It's not easy.
Hi there, I'm Andy, the COO and co-founder of QueerTech, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm excited to take this opportunity to tell you about QueerTech's digital community. The QueerTech digital community is a safe virtual space for 2S LGBTQ+ people who work with or have an interest in technology. In the digital community, members can connect, share experiences, and learn best practices. The community promotes diversity, equity, and inclusion in the tech industry, empowering members to achieve their goals and drive change. Learn more about our services and events at queertech.org.
Hi, my name is Naufel. I am the CEO and co-founder of QueerTech. And QueerTech is a nonprofit based in Montreal. And our mission is about queering the tech ecosystem. And what it means is increasing 2S LGBTQ representation in the tech industry, helping queer people advance their career in tech and launching tech businesses.
I really appreciate what you say about community, about the environment that we have around, because I do think that, we tend to put too much pressure on the individual and we forget that we actually live, with other people in communities, in relationships, and we have a sort of also a responsibility for each other. And I think as an entrepreneur, you feel this sense of responsibility for the people that work for you. Talking about leadership style, how did your Metis heritage influence that?
Being Indigenous, I think it's really interesting when we talk about Indigenous governance systems that are built around consensus. And I recognize that I'm really good at a few things. And I'm really, really bad at other things. So what do I need is I need people that know what I know or know what I don't know, like what I don't like, and then also have that common understanding of what we're working towards as a community and as a company. And so, despite the fact I'm a finance guy, I don't like doing accounting. So what do I need is a really good bookkeeper and an accountant to keep me on top of things that they like doing and allows me to focus my time and effort on the things that are going to take this company to the next step versus me, they're going to be like, hey, is this in the form that I need it in? Yes, because if I can reach that standard, then those are those expectations that we have for each other. That if my bookkeeper or accountant needs it looking like this, well, in order to make both of our lives easy, I'm going to meet that expectation. And so when I look at being the lead executive at my company, I don't look at it as this hierarchical kind of patriarchal structure of my way or no way, because do we truly know the way forward as an entrepreneur? I don't think so. I think most of us are making it up as we go, but and if I don't open myself up to getting great information from knowledgeable people that allow me to and allow us as a company to navigate this space from idea into company, into the realities that we all dream of being a tech or even just an entrepreneur, then I'm doing myself a disservice. Because anybody that says I know the linear path to get from here to here is lying to you. And that should be the biggest red flag, because it really takes that community's input. And again, being able to discern good quality information with information that might be misleading or might be biased in a way that ends up misleading you. I think that when we take those inputs from the, whether it be mentors or, people that are just observing what we're doing, I think we have to bring it in and then discern which are the good nuggets of information to take forward. And I think that kind of consensus model around looking at the quality of information that we get to determine the next step forward is really grounded in this place of humility. And I don't know how we're going to get from A to B, but together we have a better idea of how to get to A to B. And so, one of my friends owns a co-working space here in Calgary. And the motto is nobody succeeds alone. And one of my mentors says, success has a father of thousands and failure is an orphan. So the more we share, the closer we get to success, but the more we protect, our egos and the closer we get to being that, to failure where, oftentimes it's because we don't share with others kind of the problems that we're going through.
Wow, this sense of community really keeps coming back, and it might be a simple question, but what communities do you feel part of?
That's a great question. I feel comfortable in most communities. And I think one of the superpowers I have is being able to stand in each and fully represent who I am to each kind of audience. So I do feel comfortable in the energy space where I do consulting work so I can pay for this. But then also I can step into the tech space. I can step into the gay community. I can be a part of the Indigenous community and I feel comfortable. And there's very few environments where I don't feel comfortable because what I'm very confident in is who I am and what I know. But then also really, really confident to say, hey, I don't know this and know where that divide exists in a way that, makes others comfortable, where I'm not coming from a place of ego or looking to be smarter than somebody or better off than somebody. I'm looking there to represent myself authentically because at the end of the day, that's how I judge the success of a day, is if I've been able to step in different spaces and represent myself authentically and in a way that I can be proud of. So I think that's the answer, where it's not necessarily about community. It's necessarily about how I represent myself and how I can do that with, integrity.
Do you make sure that people who join Unimaize also are able to go through such a journey for themselves? Because I would imagine not everybody, has such a strong sense of self or went through what you went through. So how do you make sure that they also get to that place?
I look at my own journey of what did I need to hear when I was in my early career. What would have been really valuable to me is, God, you're good at this, or hey, this is great, and that encouraging factor, instead of looking at it from a, hey, it doesn't meet the standard that I have, despite the fact I have way more experience and way more education and way more perspective on something that would oftentimes set people up to fail in not meeting what I would expect as a quality standard. But I always tell the people that I worked with, if you can get it to 80%, we can get it to 100. But I want you to try to get it to 80. And hey, if you only get it to 50 or 60, it's better than us going from 0 to 100. I want people to test their intuition. I want people to, feel safe bringing what they know to a problem in a way, again, that always boils down to, I don't know how to get from A to B. But the more we talk about it and the more independent thought that gets put towards the solution, the better it is for the entire company. But, I've seen this so many times in my career where organizations are built on yes people, where yes, this is a great idea. Yes, 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 yes. But that blindly creates one person, in the disguise of many that aren't operating from their place of expertise or perspective, that does not lead to, a tangible solution that works for the organization. So I tend to, again, understand what skills people have that supplement the ones that I'm not great at, and then really focus on those as those high quality standards that we have mutually for each other. And then get them to test their intuition in a space that, is internal. It allows us to talk as an organization before it goes to, the reality of implementing a solution. But then again, when it boils down to it, if it fails, then we failed together and we can learn something from it, rather than, oh, Greg made this decision and it failed, and nobody can learn from it other than understanding what the consequences are. And that's not a great place to learn for people.
Hi, I'm Dae, the producer of the QT podcast. The QT podcast hosts interviews with inspiring 2S LGBTQ+ professionals and entrepreneurs in the tech ecosystem. We've created this podcast with the hopes to influence positive cultural change by creating a platform for sharing experiences, achievements, and challenges faced by members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. Thank you for listening.
I think it would be cool to work for you. I was like trying to, I was trying to like think about my own, experiences. It was like, yeah, this is, what I would need probably, those kind of also like not only of validation, but also of, guidance and like trying to figure things out together. I think it's what like most people in, either managers or entrepreneurs like lack. Like give, trust to the people, but also at the same time give guidance and try to figure things altogether. So I was just like lost in my thoughts. Was like, yes, that's nice.
It's easy to say as it's harder to do because there's personalities involved too. Like, and I think we've been trained, especially as I'm starting to rebuild this and get back on my feet after the last year. I was working with a full group of women, Indigenous, all of these, underrepresented communities in the tech space. But we also, and I'll speak for myself, and I'm not going to project this on the others, but we all bring our baggage from the corporate environment that breeds distrust, that makes us doubt each other and ourselves in this space when I'm encouraging that there's this automatic knee-jerk reaction that this isn't authentic, or there's warning flags all over the place because we're taught that, God, nobody's going to give me that because I haven't earned it in the corporate space. Well, you know what? I tend to disagree and go from it a different way where, yes, we have to be vulnerable, and I'm not going to screw you over. I'm not going to go back on my word. I'm going to make, if we have to backtrack, it's going to be a collaborative discussion. And as a leader, I always say no surprises. If I can see something coming that's going to have to alter the way that we've decided to go forward, well, that's my job to identify those as soon as possible so that I can bring it and be like, we're going to have an issue in a few weeks, so that it's not a surprise. And I think that is probably the key responsibility of a leader in this space, is to be able to foresee things that people might not be able to, because as soon as you hit that trigger button that allows somebody that you work with to be like, this is exactly the same as blah blah, then you've lost that person, you've lost their talent, you've lost their trust, that, you know what, you might not have even been aware of because of kind of the trauma that we bring from our corporate experiences that has nothing to do with me or the trust that I tend to, lead with. It has to do with the system that has been unfriendly to people like us.
Yeah, and I want to go a bit deeper into like the vision of Unimaize for representation of Indigenous and 2S LGBTQ plus people. How do you make sure that Unimaize becomes a sort of like leading example for these representations in the tech industry?
Well, that was one of my key goals of starting Unimaize is despite the fact that we were even pre-development on some of our, our tech and we were just kind of wireframing our tech, is if you Google Unimaize, it's going to be all about our identity. It's not even about what we're doing, and to me that's a different story than, a tech bro coming up with some product. That story's been told over and over and over and over. So how was I going to compete when I'm not, a cis straight white guy in this space? Well, let's talk about it from being a gay Indigenous man that is not necessarily represented in this space. That becomes my narrative competitive advantage, where instead of being a tech bro with a product, this is who we are. And by the way, we have something cool too. So looking at how we approach tech problems with tech solutions through an Indigenous lens, or the 2S LGBTQ lens, those are real perspectives that come up with different solutions that you will not get if you don't have that worldview available to you. And so when you Google Unimaize, that's exactly what you're going to see. Is you're going to see stories about who we are, how we approach our solutions to tech. And yes, it's cool what we're doing. And so it becomes less about the product and more about who we are. And honestly, that narrative has way more sustaining power than, look, I have a cool product.
Wow. We follow your journey through this interview, and I would like to close with something that you shared during our pre-chat that was your Blackfoot name, and that was very inspiring. And I think it will be interesting right now to look through that lens to what you shared. So your whole journey, how did that influence each other?
Well, so my Blackfoot name is awohkotsinaa, which means war chief. I got gifted it when I was 18 by an elder from Siksika First Nation, Marchetti, or Agar Wolfleg. And he talked about a story of this person who would be confronted with many challenges growing up. And when I was 18, I was like, what? I'm a 90% student and life's going to be easy. Look at how easy it's been so far. And almost immediately I was hit with the realities of, wait, high school isn't the real world. And the story goes that every problem is going to be manageable and you will make it through. And they're going to seem bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's because you've gone through the last one that's going to prepare you for the next one. So when I look at, when people try to talk about my successes in a way that's less than, positive, that's not their story to tell. And actually what they're trying to attack is something that might be valued in, non-Indigenous culture as a weak point for many. But my strength comes from my Blackfoot name. It doesn't come from anything that people can attack. So, when I see these traditional kind of tactics of, oppression and marginalization, I'm like, that's nice, but that's not where my strength comes from. War chief comes from persevering through challenges, despite how hard they are, how lonely they are. And he said, it's not going to be a chief in a way that, is a leader by, successes and flashy, like the Napoleon kind of like, ride into battle with your army at your back. Sometimes it's going to be alone, but it's going through those things alone that when you're able to tell the story to others, that will grow your army of support. And certainly, in the 20 years that I've had since getting that name, it's been 100% true. It's come to life. It's all about my family and support. That's my army. And that's where my support and strength comes from. Again, not those typical things that mean nothing in the world, that I've been able to grow up in and really find a belonging in. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing this. I really will treasure our conversation. It spoke to different parts of me, and I'm sure it spoke to different parts of the people who will listen to it. So thank you very much for being so open and generous with your words. And I will see you next time.
For sure. Thanks so much.